Good afternoon, conference. Let me first thank the conference committee and the technical team for setting up such a wonderful conference. And let me also thank in particular Callum and Alex in the technical team and at HQ. Not just for their fantastic work that they've done since day one, but also for their hard work in making sure that I am as hungover as I am today. I would also like to thank my fellow NEC candidates, Josh Robertson and Andrew McKinnon, for their part in my suffering. And if you want to make sure that the headaches in this party are after the meetings and not during them, I'd strongly recommend voting for one of the three of us. As someone who was lucky enough to grow up in Inverness, I've been surrounded by the legend of what happened at Culloden battlefield my entire life. The scars of what happened there are still visible in the community today. The church that sits on the bank of Inverness still has graves where you can see the musket marks of where Hanoverian forces executed men and boys, and the River Ness ran red the day of Culloden. It was also the beginning of the end of the Highland way of life. The speaking of Gaelic and the wearing of tartan was banned. Yet despite the significance to the local and national history, greedy developers are still encroaching on the battlefield site. The men who died at Culloden died for their freedom and for their way of life. You wouldn't see houses being built on Flanders Field, nor would you see them being built at the site of where Lincoln gave his Gettysburg Address. Why are we the only country in the world that is happy to destroy our own history and our own culture? I beg conference to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Will. I'd now like to call Jimmy Duncan to second the motion. Jimmy.
Good afternoon, Conference. This is quick. I'll make it as quick as I can anyway. Conference, we recognise and accept the need for more social housing. However, the upsurge and huge demand has unnecessarily jeopardised our protected sites, our burial grounds and our battlefields. Yet, many of our heritage sites, like Culloden, are under constant threat from corporate developers. Conference, this is not acceptable. We believe that each and every one of us has a moral duty to protect, preserve and honour those who fought and fell for Scotland's future and Scotland's freedoms. Our heritage and history, whilst often diluted or misrepresented, is not for sale. We demand the Scottish Government sharpen their stance, reject and abolish any and all attempts from building on the bones of our ancestors. Conference, back this motion, stop this desecration. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Jimmy. I'd now like to call Heather McLean to move the amendment. Heather McLean.
Good afternoon, Conference. Our history has a big impact on us, and understanding it can benefit us in many different ways. To understand how and why our present world is the way it is, we have to look at history for the answers. Having knowledge of our history allows us to understand where we're coming from, which in turn allows us to understand our present. It not only reveals the past, but it can help us to create a better future. An understanding of the successes and failures of the past is important if we are to grow as a society and make progress going forward. If we do not learn from our past mistakes, we're bound to repeat them. When we have knowledge of history, we are able to make more sense of the present world. Far too many Scots know little or nothing of our country's history, and what they have learned is through an English prism. What is taught in schools is patchy at best, a bit of William Wallace and Robert Bruce, Mary Queen of Scots, a wee bit of Robert Burns in what is referred to as Scottish Week, usually in January, along with a few Scottish poems and Scottish country dancing. This serves to keep Scottish people ignorant, uninformed and compliant, and is not good enough for a country with aspirations and ambition for the future. If Scots understood and knew about their heritage and history, there would be no need to even debate this resolution, because the importance of preserving our battlefields as heritage sites would be obvious to all concerned. It is time that the significance and importance of these heritage sites and their place in Scottish history should be taught as an integral and fundamental element of the Scottish education system. Conference, please support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We now move to vote on the motion, Protecting Scotland's Battlefield. Those in favour of the amendment first, could you raise your cards? Any cards against? And those in favour of the motion as amended? Any against? Motion is passed, I would say, unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Conference. We now move to motion number 18, Reducing Drug Deaths and Secondary Harm, to be proposed by David Henry. David, do you have a seconder? Will I take one from the hall? Yeah, can I have a seconder from the hall to get us? Thank you very much indeed. Plenty of support there. David Henry.
Conference. Lovely to see so many of you again. When I was asked to do this subject, I took a lot of time to research the issue. I don't stand in front of you a person who supports drug taking. I've never done it myself, and I don't recommend it. So I gave this quite a lot of thought. This resolution does not propose to encourage the taking of drugs. Its purpose is to reduce harm. As many of you will know, and if you've read the resolution, this area of policy is reserved. It is controlled by Westminster. And I wanted to bring to the attention, I'm sure many of you have seen in the media, the Scottish Conservatives in particular, who repeatedly use the media to bash Scotland whenever they possibly can. And they've certainly used that with the issue of drug taking, claiming that Scotland hasn't done enough, when they know full well they're the ones that are in control in Westminster. They have done nothing. So the first thing we need to do is send a very clear message from the Alba party to the country as a whole. It's time that we did things better. We can't possibly do it as bad as Westminster. In England, there's been a trial backed by the Home Office called The Loop. Its purpose is to reduce harm. It is also to give out information, welfare support, and to drug test at events such as music festivals. Knowledge is our best weapon against the dread of drug deaths. What's in the tablet you're about to swallow? You don't know. Why has Scotland not followed countries like Portugal, the Netherlands, Switzerland? In Portugal, they launched a drug strategy in 2000. It came into effect in July 2001. The purpose of that strategy was to reduce the deaths from illegal drugs. By 2001, the annual deaths were apparently 131. By 2008, they were down to 20. So the strategy certainly works. And it's long overdue that Scotland took control of these important public policies. Now, there's a saying in television that the best pictures on television are on radio. So I want to try something. I'd like all delegates to please close their eyes and just listen to these following words. That's everybody, please. On the 26th of May 2018, the mother of an 18-year-old, Georgina Jones, who died at the Mutiny Festival after taking just 2 pills, had paid tribute to her little girl online and gave a warning to others and to her friends on social media against the perils of drug taking. Her mother said that her daughter had suffered a 45-minute fit after she took the 2 pills. Georgina's mother then posted on Facebook, and I quote, "As I have now spoken to Georgina Jones's family members, I can now say Georgina died yesterday due to complications after taking just 2 pills at the Mutiny Festival." In quotes, more quotes. "If nothing else, I hope what has happened to her will deter you from taking anything ever again. The pills had caused her temperature to rise to over 45 degrees. Then they caused her muscles to break down, her blood to turn acidic, her heart became irregular, her lungs filled with blood and fluid, and I made the decision to turn everything off. My little girl was 18 and full of life. I just hope this stops at least some of you from ending up the same." You can open your eyes. Nobody knows what's in these tablets. The only way you find out is with an autopsy. Unless, of course, we bring in a similar reduction and we support this resolution and we allow these drugs to be tested. We're not promoting drug taking. We're promoting safety. And a final and last point. Next summer, there's more music festivals. We can fix this. Support the resolution.
Thank you very much indeed, David. I'd now like to call Denise Somerville for the Remit back, and she will be seconded in the Remit back by Fiona Sinclair. Denise, or maybe the other way around, there's 2 names on one card. I think Fiona Sinclair is the proposer. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you again, Conference. I'm speaking on behalf of Fiona again, who is the proposer, and myself, who has also contributed to this. Whilst we support the intent of the resolution to reduce the harm of illegal drugs, we know what is advocating as harm reduction does not accurately reflect the conclusions of the recent report on drugs deaths in Scotland. It would therefore not be wise to back this resolution without an amendment. Having failed to persuade the Conference Committee to include that in this, the recent report shows that most of the recent increase in drug deaths occurs between the 35 to 54-year-olds. In fact, in 2020, 63% of all drug-related deaths were in this age group. Prior to 2003, most drug-related deaths were those aged under 35. Therefore, younger people using recreational drugs at festivals are not the majority of those who are dying. The number of deaths in the 15 to 24-year-olds age groups have remained relatively stable, with a small increase in recent years. Whilst harm reduction, including drug consumption rooms, are a perfectly sound idea, we have to bear in mind that the UK Department of Health's own commissioned research shows that the greatest risk of serious violence comes not from people who are mentally ill, but those who abuse and drinking drugs. The percentage of deaths listed against the different types of drugs illustrated very clearly the known risks of polypharmacy, where 2 or more drugs are used at the same time, in particular the combined use of opiates with benzodiazepam. Sorry, I can't say that word, so I would probably use the street one, easier. These particular drugs account for 89 and 73% of deaths. The deaths are not happening because of drug impurity. It should be noted that there is no published deaths or suicide statistics for those who are forced to endure compulsory treatment under the Mental Health Act, whereas the concern for these people, who include people who are treated simply for being disabled. Psychotropic drugs used in this system have chemical similarities to illegal drugs and have similar horrific withdrawal effects. There is no services in Scotland for those wishing to taper off these drugs. Drugs tolerance and physical dependency are real, whether these drugs are prescribed or taken illegally, and the report was unable to determine what part prescribed medication had to play in these deaths. Government should continue to discourage the use of illegal drugs, educate the population about the effects, especially the effects of psychoactive and psychotropic drugs, provide addiction services that enable drug users to taper off safely from the drugs they are using, provide mental health services and make good use of therapeutic environments and methods instead of ongoing over-reliance on psychotropic drugs, and take immediate action to resolve the social and psychological fallout from disastrous economic policies. Ultimately, only a complete reversal of these policies to enable swift growth of a sustainable economy will start to reverse decades of social dislocation and damage. Please accept this remit. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. And to second the remit back, I invite Denise Somerville, to be followed by Dave Llewellyn, who will speak in favour of the motion. First, Denise Somerville. Sorry, Fiona Sinclair. So it's just yourself? Or you're speaking on behalf of both of you? Right, okay, so I'll need someone to formally second your remit back. Thank you very much indeed. That's kept us in order. Thank you. Apologies for the confusion. On which basis I call Dave Llewellyn to speak in favour of the motion. Dave.
I didn't expect to be speaking on this. But I'm a criminal, as probably 40% of people in this room are. And at the end of the day, that's because the law, the way it is, comes through Westminster, and we can't do anything about it. Now, I'm not talking about legalisation here. I'm talking about harm reduction. 2 years ago, my stepson died. My stepson died of a heroin overdose. It could have been prevented. Now, I agree completely with what Denise was saying there about the harms and of the people who are actually getting, who are dying of this. The age group has gotten older. But the thing is, what this resolution actually does is it gives you a chance that, like she mentions opiates and benzodiazepines. They are the main cause of death at the moment because people are mixing them. Benzodiazepines, basically that's a Valium that's now got much, much stronger. Now the thing is, you take your benzodiazepine, you've got your normal Valium. Now you can have something that's 10 times as strong that looks like a Valium. And so what you think you're taking a Valium, you're taking something that's completely different. Looks the same, feels the same, except it feels like 10. That's what's happening. People can't test these. What this resolution would allow you to do is not just go to festivals, it would allow you to actually put porta cabins and shopping centre car parks, where people who are buying street drugs like Valium, which is one of the biggest problems, it would allow them to take one of these pills, go in, get it tested, is that a Valium or is it one of these stronger versions? That's a death finished. Now, if you do the same thing with heroin, by the time heroin arrives in our streets, it's cut with a stuff that they call bash, which helps it run in the foil. Now, so basically, this stuff, all of a sudden, you'll get a batch coming across from Turkey. They think, OK, it's a lot stronger. And the next thing is, they don't just smoke it. I mean, somebody's unlikely to die for smoking it. But somebody will stick it in the needle and jack it up. And at the end of the day, bang, 2 seconds later, eyes go up, down. And if you're not in a place where you can fix it, there's nothing you can do about it. They do have treatment. But the thing is, if you're not in a place where you can do that, fair enough. And I understand that there are problems just now with the shooting rooms. And I can understand that Westminster don't want to give that to the Scottish Government, because it will come across that. This doesn't do that. This is something that Alba can do now by actually going to the Home Office the same way as the Loop are doing in England, in a country in the Union, and they have got a licence for the Home Office to test these. We can do that now, and we can stop some drug deaths now. And if we stop one, it's worth passing this resolution. That's good for it.
Thank you, Dave. I'm going to invite Dave Henry to sum up. David.
Conference, this is really, really simple. If we don't pass this resolution and we don't bring in that same testing regime, we will have helped kill somebody next year. There is no doubt. So we can do this, and we can do it now. There's no reason not to pass this resolution. Let's make a change. Let's do it. Alba, we care about our people in Scotland, all of them.
Thank you very much indeed. So we're now going to take a vote on motion number 18 on reducing drug deaths and secondary harm. The first vote will be on the remit back. Those in favour of the remit back, please raise your cards. Those against the remit back. The remit back falls. Those in favour of the motion as proposed. That's passed almost unanimously. Thank you very much indeed, Conference. Before I move on to the next motion, I have a driving licence and Saltire card which belongs to Mrs. Mary Jean Goodall. So please come and retrieve it wherever you are. Mary Jean Goodall, if anybody knows her, they can let her know it is here, because she'll need both items. Next, move on to motion number 19, social security powers and a real living wage for unpaid carers. That motion will be proposed by Suzanne Blackley. Welcome, Suzanne.
Good afternoon, Conference. Sorry, this is my first time speaking at a conference, so I'm quite nervous, but thank you. This won't be a long speech because I believe that the motion I've submitted speaks for itself. In 2013, the UK Government replaced Disability Living Allowance, which is DLA, and those over the age of 16 with Personal Independence Payment, PIP. Since that time, in excess of 170,000 new claims in Scotland have been refused. In addition to this, almost 40,000 of claimants previously in receipt of DLA were unsuccessful in claiming PIP when reassessed under the new points system, which differs from that of DLA. This is also an issue affecting children with disabilities. As children are still assessed on the DLA system, upon turning 16, they are then assessed under the PIP system, which results in unsuccessful claims, despite there being no fundamental change in their disability status. For example, I know of a child who received DLA until the age of 16 due to cognitive impairment. However, upon turning 16, she was refused PIP. This child has to use satellite navigation on her phone to navigate the 10-minute walk to school each day. Despite walking this same route every day for 4 years, was denied PIP, being told because she could follow the instructions for SAT navigation, there was no cognitive impairment. Bear in mind the definition of cognitive is thinking, reasoning and remembering, the latter clearly being an issue for this child, despite the repetitive daily journey. The Scottish Government pledged full devolution of DLA, PIP and carers allowance by 2021, 4 years after having this welfare devolved to it. By delaying this until 2024, they are leaving vulnerable Scottish people at the mercy of the degrading, broken and cruel Department of Work and Pensions system. the then Social Security Secretary Shirley Ann Somerville offered no reasonable reason for the cause of this delay. And it's an unacceptable failure by the Scottish Government that this timetable was changed. No one should have to battle for this entitlement. No one should have to die because of that battle. As is also the case, no party seems willing to take on the issues affecting our unpaid carers. I want Alba to be that party. As we have shown with the motions already discussed this weekend, we will tackle topics no other party has the bravery to do so. Unpaid carers are saving the state an absolute fortune, and in return they are giving a paltry sum of £67 per week. Unpaid carers have been undervalued for too long. They deserve better. Caring for a loved one is not a 9-to-5 job, but often a 24/7 one. I know this because I am one. Unpaid carers are also often in receipt of universal credit. This £67 payment is deducted in full from universal credit payments, unlike a working salary, which has a partial deduction after a threshold is met. Unpaid carers are working people, and they should be paid a real living wage for doing so. So I urge you all please to support this motion, and I submit it to conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. I now call Neil Hanvey to second the motion. Neil Hanvey.
Conference, I won't speak for long. I've had a pretty good go this weekend. I think it's fair to say. What I really want to say is Suzanne did an outstanding piece of work in putting together this resolution for conference. It was an absolute privilege to assist her in a very, very small way in producing the draft for that's before you. And I don't want to go over lots of points because Suzanne has made them so fantastically, but I want to just give you a quote that I used in my maiden speech in Parliament, and it really is an important speech because it speaks to two things. It quashes the notion that Adam Smith was somehow the father of the type of what's the word? Capitalism that we see manifested today. Because although he was the father of capitalism, he also did that from a very moral perspective. And as the representative for Kirkcaldy and Cowdenbeath, it's important for me to keep that spirit clear. And I want just to leave you with this thought. And these are his words, that no society can surely flourish and be happy of which the far greater part of the members are poor and miserable. The Scottish Government are failing in that fundamental objective by not taking forward the powers that they've been offered with the last Scotland Act settlement. And I think Suzanne deserves a real round of applause for her fantastic resolution. And please support the resolution.
Thank you very much indeed, Neil. I'd now like to call Alison Waters, who will speak in favour of the motion, to be followed by Ashley Miller. Alison Waters, please.
So guys, I wasn't going to speak today, but Suzanne is my best friend, probably, and this motion means a lot to me because I'm disabled myself. Now, I might not look it, and that's one of the problems. Most people don't. Now, the system that we have to go through every time we reapply, because it's every 3 or 4 years, is so heartbreaking and degrading, and it hangs over you like a cloud. Now, I reapplied for PIP in January, and I've still not heard back in August. That's the delay. not in August, but it really just makes you feel terrible. You don't know where you are, and it breaks your heart. And when I heard that the Scottish Government had the chance to fix this for me, I was so excited to know that for once there was going to be a system that cared about me and put me first. And when they delayed that, I felt like crap. I really did, and I felt like they didn't care, and that the government that I put my trust in had just given up on me. And that broke my heart. So to see Alba and Suzanne put me and people like me at the forefront again, it's just the best feeling in the world. And I just really hope that you support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Now I'd like to call Ashley Miller.
Rusty. I think most people have met Rusty over the weekend. You have. Yeah, thank you. You'll have to bear with me because this is the first time I've done a speech. Standing in front of you, I suppose I have two hats. I have that I need care and support, and then also the fact I'm a carer to my 10-year-old daughter with special needs too. But mostly, I think what really gets to me is through the change from DLA to PEP. My mum was chronically ill. She had type 2 diabetes, was on dialysis. She was blind due to retinitis pigmentosa, which is hereditary, which is why I have Rusty. She spent the last 3 months of her life in a state of fear, frightened that she was not going to get her PIP. Nobody should have to be like that. She'd lost a leg, she couldn't be put into a rehabilitation unit because she was visually impaired, needed dialysis. She was moved from one ward to another when there wasn't any room. This went on for 4 months. Just before she died, she got her award letter telling her that she'd received the 2 high rates for PIP. She never ever received that money. She died before her entitlement was due to come in. Her last few months should not have been worrying about if she was going to be able to pay for her care or anything like that. They took the last few months away from her. That benefit had been promised to be done by the Scottish Government, and now we're still waiting on the Scottish Government taking over these benefits. There's been a huge breakdown with disabled people during the COVID, the lockdown. Some of you might not be aware that there are a very lot of disabled people on high-rate PIP. They've been through assessment, high-rate care, high-rate PIP mobility, who didn't have a medical condition that involved shielding, was abandoned. There was no food supplies, there was no access to shopping. If the disabled people like myself had daily shopping, a weekly shopping slot at the supermarkets, they were removed. They were given to those on the shielding list in care homes. The priority seems to be at the moment that, sorry I'm shaking, but the priority seems to be that we are fighting each other and organisations are fighting each other for small bits of funding from the local councils to be able to provide the services that disabled people need. And at the moment, it seems to be that certain medical conditions you need the 100% proof. And they seem to be pushing for other medical conditions to suddenly become self-ID'd. It's not on, because those who are in genuine need that have to go through the system are now having to wait 2 to 3 times longer to be assessed because you're able to now self-ID to be able to include the student grants, things like that. The other thing that also, to make you aware, people talk about carers, paid and unpaid. Unfortunately, there's another group of carers out there that get no recognition whatsoever because they're either working more than 35 hours a week, which is the maximum. If you work more than that, you can't then claim carers. But if you're working during the day and you've got a disabled child or a disabled adult, and they're maybe out at different if they're out at different clubs, different societies, respite during the day, you're still working when you come home from work. You're still with that person, whether they're needing medication, if they've got cancer and they're dying, you're doing that until you've managed to get them to bed. That's if they do go to bed. But because you are not claiming a benefit, you don't get any extra, any help, because you're just not classed even as an unpaid claim, and that is wrong. Also, we have people who are fostering their grandchildren, nieces, nephews in the system, who get a rate of allowance from local authority, but doesn't take into account if that child has any disabilities, any special needs. It's a flat rate. Our children are not flat rates. Each child is individual, their needs, their wants are all different, and they should be paid the money in connection with the disabilities of the children, how much care they need, when they need it. You know, there's no two ways about it. Sorry, it just gets emotional because my wee one doesn't sleep. We go through periods where she might sleep, and then I go through periods where she doesn't sleep. When she doesn't sleep, I don't sleep. It's not safe, and other parents like me, more so with the children that are coming through with more hyperactive disorders, neurological disorders, the autism. It's the parents that are having to put in the work, and there's no recognition at all. And that has to change, because at some point, somebody's going to break, and it's just not right. The carers' fatigue is real. I will support the motion, please.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to call Sean Davis to speak in favour of the motion. Sean Davis.
Hi there. I look like a normal, healthy 30-year-old man. I tell you, I suffer from chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia. I want you all to support this motion. There's people out there with invisible disabilities that have to go through hell with the personal independence payment system. I know all too well. I've been on personal independence payment for about 6 years now. And I actually last year went to court with them. And it took for a judge to phone me personally, because it was done through Zoom and stuff, to tell me it shouldn't have went that far. And it's ridiculous how disabled people are looked upon, and by these so-called health professionals that don't even look at your notes. I have got a folder full of my medical conditions, mental health problems and everything else that need the Scottish Government have this power, and they're not doing it. Well, I was told that they were going to be bringing it in so you don't have to be assessed, and they still haven't done it. So, Alba, conference, brothers, sisters, I want you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Sean. I'm pleased to say there are no cards in against. So can I ask that motion number 19 on social security powers and a real living wage for unpaid carers is passed by acclaim? Thank you, delegates. Before I move on to motion number 20, I just want to let you know we're having a couple of topical resolutions this afternoon, but one I wanted to let you know about in case you wanted to put any cards in is on the situation in Afghanistan. And we're very lucky to have Dr. Yvonne Ridley, who will be speaking to us in her motion. She was, of course, captured by the Taliban in 2001. So if anyone has any cards to put in, please do so. We now move to child and family poverty, motion number 20 on the agenda, to be moved by Christina Henry. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you, Chair, and hello, Conference. So I thought I'd start off by giving a little background and then going on to say why I feel this motion is so important. So childhood adversity refers to factors in a child's life that are external to that child, but can have severe impacts on their psychological, educational, and behavioural development. Some examples of these childhood adversities include growing up in neglect, household dysfunction, and economic deprivation. The effects of these childhood adversities, known as ACEs, are often severe and long-lasting. Prolonged exposure to these stresses triggers a long-term stress response which can affect immune and cardiovascular systems. The effects of these ACEs carry on into later life, and they're linked to chronic health problems, mental health, and substance misuse in adulthood. Now, growing up in poverty is not only often considered an adverse childhood experience in itself, research has shown that it's often linked to many of the other adverse experiences, in that growing up in poverty means you're more likely to experience more ACEs. For example, growing up in poverty means you're more likely to have a family member in prison. Growing up in poverty means you're more likely to be in a household of substance misuse. The more ACEs that a child has, the more likely they are to experience negative outcomes, severe negative outcomes, in adulthood. So this is why supporting families and working to mitigate poverty will help the developmental growth of a child and their mental and physical health in so many ways. So why tackle child and family poverty? So we can think selfishly from society's point of view. ACEs are costly. They're costly to families, costly to communities, and costly to society as a whole. In reducing childhood poverty, it will therefore go on to save the health service a substantial amount of money in the future. But surely the main reason for tackling child poverty is because we want every child to have a happy and healthy childhood. So then, how can we tackle child and family poverty? Well, this is where policies such as the 5-point plan in this motion come in. It covers various aspects of a child's life, which I'm sure you'll have seen. For instance, providing free breakfasts and lunches to all school pupils in Scotland all year round allows them the best opportunity to learn and develop, but also because no child in Scotland should ever go hungry. Another point in the 5-point plan is universal access to sport facilities for every child, every under 18. This will provide every single child the opportunity to enjoy sports, but also to benefit from the positive impact that they've been proven to have on both physical and mental health. So, Conference, this speech might have been a little bit of a psychology lecture, but it is for these reasons, all of the above, which is backed up by multiple sources of research, that I urge you to support this motion and show that we in Alba care about all children and all families in Scotland. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. And to second the motion, I'd like to invite our newly elected National Equalities Convener, Eva Comrie. Eva.
Thank you very much, Conference. I'm the one-legged woman from Clackmannanshire who won't wheesht.
Yay!
I said woman, deliberately of course, because we know the definition of a woman, we've covered it already. Yes, we do. But for those out there who might not have been listening yesterday, we'll just tell them again today. It's an adult human female. And this adult human female finds herself mortified to be standing here in Scotland in 2021, shaken with nerves and rage, as is every other person in this room, and so should every other member of the population of this country of Scotland, a country brimming over with potential. In food, in gardens, in farms, in cattle, in trees, in apple trees. I know children that don't know what an apple looks like. Do you know that? I know children who share shoes. I know children who cannot learn when they go to school because they haven't had any breakfast, and some of them hadn't had any dinner the night before either. So for all you, help me out, Neil, how many SNP MPs are there in Westminster now?
47.
Is it 46?
47, I think.
47 SNP MPs?
Might change soon.
45. I hope it does.
Just keep counting down, Eva, we'll get there.
I hope you're listening. Try a night on a food bank. Try a couple of nights going to your bed hungry. See how you feel getting up in the morning and the cupboard's bare, bar the dregs and the bottom of a bottle of cheap tomato sauce. And then come to my work for a week. Read some of the files in my cabinet, read some of the social work reports, read them and greet like we greet. I know mothers that spoke to me 30 years ago when Jim Sillars spoke about the purpose of the Scottish National Party. He said then, and he was right then, but he wouldn't be right now, it was at that stage the purpose of that party to do a job they didn't do, but this party will. We will wipe every unnecessary tear from every Scottish cheek. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eva. Sorry, Conference. I'd now like to invite Dr Andrew Docherty to speak in favour of the motion, to be followed by Councillor McElhenney, who will be speaking as an Inverclyde Councillor Junior. Andrew Docherty.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I feel a bit humbled, which is not usual for me, but I feel very humbled to be able to take to have your attention for a moment after two such rousing endorsements of my own feelings. I'm really here just to amplify them. I was going to try and give you an extemporary kind of blustering speech, in my maiden speech in this party, without any notes, but it's such a point of such a case of such importance to me personally and for the nation that I'm going to actually use some notes. So I'd like just to say, I've been reading medical research now for about 40 years as a medical student and as a practitioner. But the single most enlightening piece of research that I have ever read in terms of transforming the effect on my practice has undoubtedly been the ACE study referred to by Christina. It was conducted in America some years ago, and it's been replicated many times over around the world. It confirmed what I and many of my more enlightened colleagues knew intuitively over the millennia, namely, that the primary determinants of the majority of human suffering and premature mortality does not lie in our genes or our biochemistry, but in the following. 1. Occupational disease. 2. Childhood poverty. 3. Poor housing and hygiene. 4. Alcoholism and drug addiction. 5. Unemployment and malemployment. 6. Economic uncertainty and insecurity. 7. Domestic violence and dysfunction. 8. Poor diet and obesity. 9. Sexual and emotional abuse, to name a few. I discovered from that ACE study, Adverse Childhood Experiences, that vastly increased levels of heart disease, which is my speciality, I'm a cardiologist, inflammatory disease and cancer and mental illness are directly related to early childhood environments and early adult environments. In other words, poverty. Poverty that derives not from global and national lack of resources, but from unequal distribution of nature's bounty. If we want, and I know you all want this, because I've spoken to many of you today, it's been, over the last couple of days, it's been very inspiring to me. If we want to improve the physical and mental health of this nation, especially our children, we need to prioritise two things. Number one, the immediate delivery as a political priority of relief to the victims of Thatcherism and New Labour ideologies. Hands-on, face-to-face, cheek by jowl with those who are suffering and the casualties of that. And that's what I call first aid. Number two, proper treatment following first aid. The eradication of poverty as an overriding concern in Scotland over the next 2 to 3 decades. Now, many of you may say, I hear oversimplification, I hear you might say. Yes, it is that simple. Self-determination, then self-care. The Tories are not going to make the mental and physical health of our bairns a priority. We must. Support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I now call Junior Councillor Chris McElhenney to speak in favour of the motion.
Good afternoon, Conference. Before I start, I want to congratulate Neil Hanvey in being elected our new Westminster Group Leader. Yes. And as much as thanking him, Chair, the reason I wanted to say that was because the Inverclyde Alba Council Group, we've yet to decide who the leader will be. So I may not be junior, I may be senior once more, but I'll be happy to endorse your candidacy, sir. You are the daddy, and of course, that's my mum beside you. But Conference, I just wanted to make some points about this resolution, because we've heard some magnificent speakers thematically discussing the real issues at heart. But I wanted to actually drill into some of the actual policies that Alba are proposing. Because during the election, I heard a lot of discussion that, we were a party without ideas. We were the only party at the Holyrood elections that stood with a radical plan to eradicate child and family poverty. We've seen the programme for government last week. Not a single new idea to tackle some of the major challenges that face Scottish families and Scottish children today. And what are we proposing? A 5-point plan. Let's actually have a look at it. Introduce a £500 payment annually to assist 500,000 low-earning households in Scotland. People think, how would you afford that? It's an accountancy matter. You just take council tax and you refund it to people that are in receipt of council tax reduction. We're already doing it. We've done it in Inverclyde this year to the sum of £150. No impact on anyone's benefits, with no taxation impacts. Just a bit of imagination. Increase the Scottish Child payment to £40 a week. Now, the Scottish Government hope to increase it to £20 by the end of this Parliament, the end of the term of this Parliament. It seems to be a phrase that we keep hearing, that things will be delivered at the end of the term of this Parliament. But these are priorities that should be delivered now. And what does that £40 do? I watched a magnificent debate in Westminster recently with one of our Scottish MPs, an Alba MP of course. Neil Hanvey raised the point about the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. The warnings are there. What will happen if we don't make these decisions? We can only keep 400,000 children in Scotland out of poverty, living in 250,000 households, by increasing it to £40. So I ask again, First Minister, why at the end of this Parliament £20? Why not £40 now? We propose extending free school meals to every child in Scotland. Not a new idea. Not a new idea. An idea that actually shows the strength of representation in the Scottish Parliament, because credit's where it's due. It was the Scottish Socialist Party almost 20 years ago that were voted down in the Scottish Parliament when they first tried to propose free school meals. Almost 20 years ago. And again, people say, how much would it cost? It's always the question, how much would it cost? It's not possible. Well, I'm happy to announce today that at the end of this year, your Alba group, which is only one day old, thanks to our pressure, every primary school child in Inverclyde will receive, in primary school will receive a free school meal at the end of this year, not at the end of the Parliament. And if we can do it in Inverclyde, why can we not do it in Glasgow? Why can we not do it in Aberdeenshire? Why can we not do it in every single local authority in Scotland? But conference, it's becoming obvious to me that we are the party of big ideas, because we don't want to just roll out free school meals to primary school children. That makes no sense. What about high school children? Who in their right mind thinks that when children go to high school, the cost of the school day gets cheaper? It gets more expensive. So why would you say to families, well done, you've had a free school meal for 7 years, now you need to spend £240 a year on the cost of free school meals at high school? It makes no sense. And again, for the naysayers that say, how would you pay for it? That's £240 for every child in the pocket of their parents. That's £240 back in their pockets for them to spend. £240 to lift them out of poverty. £240 into your butcher, into your newsagents, into your local economy. That's a policy that makes a real difference. And you know, another thing I hear conference is about the educational attainment gap. Now, there's been real good work done over the last few years in reducing the educational attainment gap. But how have we done it? We've put extra teaching resource into schools. You know, we all know that smaller class sizes make a difference, more teacher contact makes a difference. So that's what happens. That's how we're driving down the attainment challenge. But what happens when that resource ends? Again, because it's only been promised to the end of the life of this Parliament. What happens when that resource gets taken away? Have we addressed poverty? Have we addressed the issues at the home that actually impact and cause the attainment gap? No, we've not. So we might reduce it now, but at the end of this Parliament, as well as not delivering a referendum on Scottish independence, we will see that attainment gap rise again. That's why Alba are calling for the doubling of the educational attainment gap from £30 to £60, not at the end of this Parliament, but now. And of course, it's not just about the money, it's about how you deliver the policy. Because at the moment, a lot of young people, their educational attainment is impacted because of absence. Issues that mean they can't go to school, If they don't go to school or college, they don't receive their educational attainment allowance. What sort of fair system takes the money out of young learners' pockets through no fault of their own conference? That decision must be scrapped, and not at the end of this Parliament, but now. And of course, Conference, the fifth point of our five-point plan. Why do we charge the children of Scotland to access leisure and sports facilities? We get called the poor health man of Europe. We know we have issues in Inverclyde, in Glasgow, across Scotland. Why do we charge kids to go and play on a football pitch? Why do we charge kids to go swimming? Why do we charge kids if they want to go and access a gym? Surely we should be looking at the preventative solutions of stopping that future impact on our NHS, by keeping our children fit and healthy now. And that's something that we'll certainly be pushing forward here in Inverclyde. And Conference, just to sum up, I want to just make a point. I watch Neil Hanvey and I watch Kenny McCaskill and some honourable others such as Joanna Cherry make really good points standing up for Scotland, but I don't hear it often enough. But at this conference, we are currently debating the solutions to lift families in Scotland out of poverty. At the same time, Boris Johnson and his billionaire cronies, they want to end the lift in universal credit and take £20 a week out of the pockets of Scottish families, and that will put hundreds of thousands of people back below the breadline. That's absolutely unacceptable, Conference. The future outcomes of Scotland's children should be Westminster's no more. And there's only one way we can take the future of Scotland's children back into our own hands. Independence, now.
Thank you very much indeed. So just moves to vote on motion number 20, child and family poverty. There are no cards in against. Can I ask that the motion is passed by acclaim? Thank you, Conference. We now move to motion number 21, Scotland in the World, to be proposed by Denise Finlay. Denise.
The Scottish Government was elected in May 2016 on a manifesto which stated the Scottish Parliament should have the right to hold another referendum if there is a significant and material change in the circumstances that prevailed in 2014, such as Scotland being taken out of the EU against our will. There was no question about the legitimacy of the Scottish Parliament and the people of Scotland being able to revisit the question of independence if those exact circumstances occurred. And those exact circumstances did occur. So why aren't we independent? After the Brexit vote, the Scottish Government focused on Scotland remaining in the single market. Even the Tories agreed, until Westminster told them no. The Scottish Government produced a document, Scotland's Place in Europe, which would have kept both Scotland and the UK in the single market, or failing that, at least kept Scotland in the single market. Quite honestly, if Westminster had adopted that strategy, and they could have, we would not be in the world of pain we are today. The document was ignored, not just by Westminster, but by the SNP. Instead, Ian Blackford stood up at every opportunity and repeatedly assured Westminster and us all that Scotland would not be dragged out of the EU against our will. until we were. Every bit of harm caused by Brexit, and that harm will be considerable, should be brought home and laid at the door, not of the Westminster Tories, who are, after all, only implementing what their electorate and their country ask them to do, but are at our ineffectual, incompetent SNP government, who have utterly failed Scotland. Failed during a time where the British state has never been weaker. Failed to win a single advantage for Scotland. Even when they had the balance of power in Westminster, they failed. Instead, we have ended up with the worst possible situation. Who would have thought back in 2016 that after the mandates and the promises and all the bluster, 5 years later, Scotland would be out of the EU with the hardest of Brexits, facing a future of Tory governments we will never vote for? It's a tragedy for Scotland. We have lost our EU citizenship. We've lost single market membership, including the 4 freedoms to live and work in any EU country, to sell goods or services anywhere in the EU, and the free movement of capital. We've lost the guarantee of high food and environmental standards. We've lost consumer rights, roaming, EU roaming, access to EU programmes like Erasmus and exchange schemes. This without ever being given the opportunity to choose independence. If the SNP actually believed in the sovereignty of the Scottish people, they would have enacted our will. They would not be begging Boris Johnson for a Section 30. When finally we get the opportunity, and it will likely be Alba that has to provide it, and we choose independence, we have to move forward for where we are now. To minimise economic damage, Scotland needs to be back in the single market. We can achieve this by joining the European Free Trade Association, EFTA. This would allow Scotland to become once again part of the European Economic Area, which gives us all the benefits of the single market. But crucially, it's not part of the common agriculture or fisheries, which would allow an independent Scotland to negotiate its own deals. EFTA is an economic union, not a political one, which Scotland could likely join in months rather than years, and could be negotiated in parallel with independence negotiations. This allows Scotland to start life as an independent country in a far stronger position economically than we are today. Decisions on the customs union and EU membership would be taken by the people of an independent Scotland. We must put right this wrong of Brexit, a Brexit against the expressed will of the Scottish people, Scotland's MPs and Scotland's Parliament. And I say to the politicians who we tasked with protecting Scotland from Brexit, who we mandated to protect Scotland from Brexit, Nicola Sturgeon and Ian Blackford, you let us down. You let Scotland down. Alba will not let Scotland down. We will regain Scotland's independence, regain our place in the single market, and Scotland will once more be an independent European nation. Please support the motion.
Thank you very much indeed, Denise. Denise will be followed by Jeff Bush, who will second the motion. And then I have a card in from Terry Howson. Terry, you haven't ticked whether it's for or against. Where's Terry? You're speaking for the motion. I'll tick for you, I understand. So Jeff to speak for the motion, to be followed by Terry. Jeff Bush.
Good afternoon, Conference. It's a great pleasure to second this motion because much of the motion is contained in point 2 of the transition plan to independence proposed by the Scottish Sovereignty Research Group, SSRG. But I'd like to briefly address a few of the questions prompted by the motion. So how do we know that joining EFTA would be straightforward and quick? Well, because at the SSRG, unlike the Scottish Government, we've actually spoken directly with the people that run EFTA and put to them the proposition that Scotland applying for EFTA, how long would it take? They basically said, it's an open door, all you have to do is to apply and it will be simple and quick. We've done that unofficially, obviously, but somebody had to do it. So having joined EFTA, as Denise pointed out, it's another simple step for Scotland, like some of the other EFTA countries, to join the EEA and agree protocols on agriculture and fisheries with individual EU/EEA members. So first step, EFTA; second step, economic area. Why would we not just join the EU? Because even with the best will in the world, it can take, say, 5 years for Scotland to rejoin the EU and regain the losses incurred by Brexit. It's very simple, it'll take a long time. Another benefit of EFTA membership is a better trading relationship with England. We do want this. We do want a better trading relationship with England than if we were members of the EU and thus constrained by overall EU trade policy in relation to England. Furthermore, this is not an either-or decision. EFTA membership does not prevent us from applying for EU membership. And once we know the exact terms of that EU membership, we can hold a referendum on whether to join the EU, unlike the Brexit referendum where nobody actually knew what we were getting into. So, even if we do eventually rejoin the EU, we can best mitigate the damage caused by Brexit by joining EFTA and the EEA immediately following independence. Please support the motion.
Thank you, Jeff. I now call Terry Howson to be followed by Gail Miller, both who will speak in support of the motion. Terry.
Well, hello, everybody.
Hello.
My name is Terry Howson. I'm an artist with a big gub. And what happened earlier on, the reason why I'm here, is because Corrie Wilson came along, tried to drop me in it, and my friend, who had dropped in it earlier on, said, I shall do it. So I'm up here to do it. I'm a woman with a great big gob and a tendency to social Tourette's. So if you hear a wee swear word, I didn't really mean it that much. Scotland and the world, I really don't know what I'm going to say here, but I'm going to tell you what I feel about Scotland in the world. That's the best I can do. I lived in France for 10 years. And one of the first things they say to you is, "Vous êtes anglaise, madame?" with that sort of sound. And when you say, "No, no, no, je suis écossaise," "Oh, quelle différence!" The difference between being Scottish and being English is remarkable throughout the world. When you're in the States, people will say to you, "Where did you come from? Where did you get that accent?" And you say, "Well, I'm Scottish, I'm Glasgow," right? And they say, "Oh, I have an uncle who was born in Moray." And you think, "Do you know him?" "No, I don't actually know." Do you know somebody for Easterhouse?" "I don't know. I don't know them," right? But there's that thing with the Americans, because they're all immigrants, let's face it. And pretty many of them are Scots. We go down a bomb with the Americans, don't we? Well, sometimes with a real bomb. And the French love us, and the Spanish love us, because we like a great British breakfast. But they don't like the English, they like the Scots. So why are we tied to England? Why are we tied to them? Why are they the ones that lay down the rules that we've got to bloody well follow? What is that about? I don't understand that. Why are we not independent? Why? Because independence is actually normal. And see all that cack shite that we hear, sorry, slipped it, that we hear about Scotland's too wee, Scotland's too poor, and Scotland's too stupid. No, it's not. No, it's not. I used to live in the northeast of France. My neighbours were Luxembourg, which is mega rich and toty, and Switzerland, which is mega rich and toty, and just up the road from Monaco, which is feckin' too rich and toty. So we're neither too wee nor too poor. Now, stupid, are we stupid? Well, we might be, because we're still no bloody well independent. It's time. It's time for us to be the change. It's time for us to start living our lives as free Scots, not ruled by some burly big bampot and with a name like Boris. Anyway, it's not time for that. It's time for us to stand up. Stand up, Scotland. Stop crawling on your knees and saying, "Oh, please, sir, can we have an S30? No, independence is normal, and it is time. This is our moment, Scotland, to stand up and self-ID as an independent bloody nation.
Thank you very much indeed, Terry. I now call Gail Miller to speak in favour of the motion. Gail.
Well, how do you follow that, eh?
You can.
Okay, so mine is probably going to be a bit more attackive. But, okay, I've never been a member of a political party because, frankly, I've seen them all as being pretty much the same. So, why did I join Alba? Because I think you've got the opportunity to be something different. Okay, so Alba, as a new political party, is dedicated to the reassertion of Scotland's statehood. has the opportunity not to repeat or compound upon mistakes of the past, and to do what no other political party has ever done: assert Scotland's sovereign authority now and at all times, instead of treating it as an abstract. Scotland's authority is absolute, as Scotland is first and foremost a sovereign nation-state, and it must act accordingly. Entering into an international agreement with England did not change that. Sorry, bit out of breath. Oh. Okay, I'm not usually a big speaker, apart from calling numbers. Right. Okay, wait till I find my space again. Okay, so, while both countries ceded their statehood, creating a state in lieu, they both retained all of their rights prior to and after the signing. Scotland was not extinguished and subsumed into a Greater England under the new name of UK, as is espoused by Crawford and Boyle, and promoted during the NDREF as being so. It does not have a devolved government. It is not a devolved country, nor a devolved nation. It is a sovereign nation-state, with a government imbued with Scots sovereignty, sitting in the Parliament of Great Britain as an equal partner with equal authority to the treaty. English governance and use of its departments may have been conventionally observed, but convention is not law. There is nothing that the English government can do that Scotland can't, and that includes creating international treaties and leaving them. Scots must stop viewing their country and nation as a colony, giving the English government a veto over Scotland and referring to its partner as UK, as though they are the sole authority of the state, for they are not. Nor should they permit the English government to dictate Scotland's budget when both countries legally have equal representation to the Treasury. Scotland must assert its fundamental, inalienable rights in full, and when the Scottish Government abdicates responsibility for the governance of Scotland, as they do on a daily basis, Alba and the Scots as a nation must hold them to account. There must not be a lessening of Scotland and its status as a sovereign nation-state and equal partner to the treaty. The Scots see themselves, by and large, as a social, community-based humanitarian country, and by asserting their authority, they can make a difference on the world stage. Never again would Scotland be dragged into illegal wars, or have its people and businesses deported from the country, nor have a foreign country dictate who can and cannot live, work and train in Scotland. If the English establishment want the Union, then let's give it to them, under the terms that it was signed. There is no state government, despite there being a parliament, no constitution, legal system, religion, parliamentary sovereignty, nor clause granting the transference of English parliamentary sovereignty onto the Parliament of Great Britain, no majority rule nor clause granting dominion based on MP, population nor voting numbers. No party political system, capital, territorial border, nor military, and the rules governing the English Parliament prior to its abolition are irrelevant to the new Parliament. Scotland is an equal partner with equal authority. It must take its place in the Parliament of Great Britain, not at the back of the room, as is currently the case, as though it is a minor party, but at the table directly opposite the English government as an equal partner. Scots must stop seeking permission to act in Scotland's interests. Alba, as a new party, has the opportunity to begin as it means to go on, to assert Scotland's rights and hold the Scottish Government to account, instead of permitting the abdication of responsibility to continue. And when both governments attempt to subjugate Scotland and bring the Scots under English dominion, Alba must remind them firmly that Scotland is a sovereign nation-state and retains its right to dissolve the agreement if any breaches to the terms of the agreement are made. These include, but are not limited to, the English IM Act and the attempt to write into law English parliamentary sovereignty, which fundamentally changes the very nature of the treaty itself. They must be reminded that Scotland has a majority of pro-Indy MPs who can, at will, make a proclamation to dissolve the treaty. and we will do so. Make no mistake, Alba is rising.
Thank you very much indeed, Gail. And that brings to the end the motion on Scotland and the world. There are no cards in against. Can I ask that the motion is passed by acclaim? Now, delegates, we've had a very, very busy morning and afternoon of debate, and I thought that might be a nice idea as we build up to the main event, which of course is a drawing of the Raffle, to have a musical interlude. So I'm going to call Ian McGilvery on stage, and after he plays for us a bit, love to hear his music, I'm going to call for a short break till 3:30 to allow some of our stewards who are volunteers to take a brief break from their duties, because they've been on duty throughout all of the events, so they can come in and see the leader's speech. I'll be happy with that. Then at 3:30, steady boys at the back, I'm not finished. Then at 3:30, we will hear two topical motions, one on Afghanistan and one on Kashmir. Then there'll be the Raffle prize draw, and then we will have the main event. So first of all, I'm going to pass over to Ian McGilvery. pictures. I think we're going to, I mean, at the end, I know it's going to do a picture with office spaces, etc. I mean, and even for own, actually, do you want to be on social media? Sort of you, or generally the Westminster group team? Yeah. Let's just do it again. See when it puts close, the lights and all of that are there. Then when it's not spent the lights, and so I'll do the Westminster picture then, okay?
Need any more chairs at the front table?
Delegates, we're at 3:30. I'm just going to ask the final. I can see everyone's just taking their seats. So if I can just give you a couple more minutes to make yourself comfortable, and we will get started. Thank you. No, yes. Yes. When I he's going to invite me to. Getting people from upstairs to come down is a good idea. Yeah. I've spoken to the paper about what to do. That's his water. What new water?
I'm just conscious of other people that are going to be here before him. So
I'll keep an eye.
I've got a spare just in case.
There's a spare one right in front of me. No, please sit here, Kenny. And then when Alex speaks, obviously you'll be up there and I'll be here. When he's speaking, you'll be where I am. When he's finished speaking, he's going to send me up there to then be you and him. The prizes will be, I'll announce it, once you announce the winning numbers will be given to the lady that did the drawing, will be attached to the prizes in the other rooms. So you don't have to hand stuff over on the stage. In just a second, yeah?
I need to ask Kenny a question.
Yes, Morgan.
The resolution against me
yes.
doesn't seem to be emergency when it refers to the year 2019.
I think
and it's a very complex subject. It's a very long resolution.
Which is why, yes.
Against everyone who's responsible. It's not going to commit us to anything.
No, all I'm going to ask them to do is
to be against you, against the forces of human.
I say, okay, it was already taken care of. It's just that I'd made the mistake of asking him if he got enough water to just come into his head.
Sorted. And welcome back. We now turn to our topical emergency resolutions, of which we have two. The first one is on Afghanistan, which you'll see on the screen behind me. And to move that topical and both topical and emergency resolution, I would add, is Dr. Yvonne Ridley. Please welcome her to the stage.
Crowded. Conference. I have walked through the killing fields of Iraq, Syria, Libya, Palestine, Darfur, and Afghanistan. And without exception, I can tell you those in the front lines of suffering are without doubt women. The UK's involvement in each of these engagements has been shameful, exposing imperialistic ambitions at the cost of ordinary people. The focus of this motion today is on Afghanistan. You don't need me to tell you of the horrors that have been visited upon the Afghan people for centuries, but the last 2 decades have illustrated the abject failure of Western policies that attempt to bring peace by the barrel of a gun. The cynic in me says Western policy hasn't failed because it never existed in the first place. Firstly, we were told by Blair, remember him, and his cronies that this war was all about preventing another 9/11 by toppling the Taliban. Then we were told it was to get rid of Al-Qaeda and make Europe's streets safer. And that worked well, didn't it? The Spanish are still reeling from the 2004 train bombings in which 193 people were killed and nearly 2,000 injured when 10 bombs exploded on 4 trains in the stations in Madrid during rush hour. Here in the UK, of course, we had July 7, the murder of Lee Rigby, a spree of attacks throughout 2017, from the Westminster attack to the Manchester Arena bombing. And in Scotland, there was the Glasgow airport attack in 2007. France has had its fair share too, including the Bataclan massacre in Paris. Of course, there was global blowback from the far right with the Anders Breivik massacre in Norway and the New Zealand atrocities carried out on the worshippers at 2 mosques. Next, we were told this war was all about human rights and the liberation of Afghan women. Later still, they tried to convince us it was all about nation building. This ever-shifting attempt to justify a 20-year fruitless occupation resulted in the deaths of more innocents both in Afghanistan and overseas. I can't honestly tell you how many Afghan civilians perished or have been maimed by war, because the death toll of Afghan innocents was not deemed important enough to record in the early years of the occupation. Of course, we do know exactly how many soldiers died from the US, UK, NATO and other forces, 42 nations in all. In the fog of war, it was often difficult to tell the heroes from the villains as news of kidnap, rendition, torture, the bombing of hospitals and schools and other war crimes emerged. In essence, the richest countries in the world spent billions dropping million-dollar bombs on $10 huts. You might not like the end result of what's happened, but it seems America and its closest ally in the UK replaced the Taliban with one of the most corrupt governments in the world. And look where we are now. Back to the future, Taliban Mark II. Invoking scenes of Saigon, 1970s, we saw horrors unfold as a US airplane attempted to take off from Kabul civilian airport while hundreds of fleeing Afghans attempted in vain to climb on board. Afghanistan has been totemic to the West since the first disastrous wars from 1839 to 1842. This latest conflict has lasted considerably longer, but the one constant has been the arrogance exposed by the colonial attitude towards the Afghan people, who are often portrayed as violent, backward, and medieval. The truth is, the Taliban did not create Afghan culture. That has existed for centuries. The culture is dominated by Afghan traditional values. Westminster couldn't care less about these souls and is more focused stopping migrant boats packed with Afghans from crossing the English Channel. There will be those who are and have been critical of what I have to say, but we either find a way of working with the Taliban or we walk away from the Afghan people right now. If we abandon them, it will be viewed as the ultimate betrayal. I'm urging you today to acknowledge that the Afghan people deserve better. I say we find a way of navigating through this uncharted territory, and instead of returning with more troops, why don't we send in an army of teachers and airlift humanitarian aid? Let's bombard the Afghans with practical help. Everyone agrees the security, welfare and education of Afghans is pivotal. I know the Taliban leadership personally, and I can tell you we do have something in common. To be brutally frank, they like us about as much as we like them. But we also have other shared interests, and that is for Afghanistan to put behind 5 decades of war, strife, famine and occupation, and they can only do that with our support and help from around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ridley. I'd now like to invite David Henry to second the motion. David.
Conference. This is an important resolution. When Scotland becomes an independent country, we need to have a foreign policy that shows respect to all other countries. We need to be helping create peace. So we should, of course, engage with Afghanistan to help the people that we've now abandoned, even though it wasn't in our name. Support the resolution.
I have no cards in against, so I'm asking conference if the resolution is passed by acclaim. Our second and final resolution before we turn to the main events of this afternoon is one on behalf of Scottish Asians for Alba. It's a very long resolution. I don't even know if it will fit on the screen, but for it to be in order, I'm simply going to ask the conference to commit to the following, which is what is being asked, which is a declaration of support for the upholding of international human rights obligations in Kashmir. That is the sum total and the sense of the motion. And I'd like to call to propose that motion, I believe perhaps this party's newest member, Mohammed Shuaib, who proposed the motion and will be seconded by Naseem Malik, both are Scottish Asians for Alba. Mohammed Shuaib.
Conference, this is the first time I am speaking from this platform. It gives me great pleasure to be with you. I have been living in Scotland since 1985, and I have worked throughout my life for the independence of Scotland. This history which we are making today, and when I'm looking at the audience today, it gives me a lot of encouragement that we will achieve our dream and Scotland will become an independent nation. Now coming to the main theme of the motion, Kashmir has a long history and a turbulent area in subcontinent. The first UN resolution was passed 21st of April 1948. We declare that all the foreign forces should be withdrawn from Kashmir and people should have fair and free plebiscite to determine their own future, like we had in 2014 referendum to decide. So it was on a similar basis, but that never happened. People of Kashmir still waiting, and they are suffering. Today's theme is more on human rights violation. We have some over 100,000 people have been killed in this conflict. 35,000 women have been raped. Some 13,000 young people aged between 12 to 18 are missing, and their parents are still waiting to hear about them. This is the history of Kashmir. Even now we have another superpower which also engaged, which is China. We have seen the border conflict between India and China last year, where hundreds of army personnel died from the both sides. So conference is very important that the message goes to international community, from the international community to all those who are inflicting these human rights violations, no matter which part, whether it's under administrative Indian Kashmir, Pakistani Kashmir, or Ladakh, which is partly controlled by China. Kashmir has population of over 12 million people, 84,000 square mile radius this state exists. And we were far more independent before these two countries, India and Pakistan, became independent. So I want to highlight some of the extract from United Nations report. What I'm going to say today is, it's not my wording. These are the wording and the finding of United Nations Human Rights Commission. The India should give respect to this international human rights obligation in Indian held Kashmir. Pursuant to the United Nations report on Jammu and Kashmir in 2018 and 2019, an independent inquiry commission should be established to probe all civilian killings, torture, inhumane and degrading treatment or punishment, arbitrary arrest, detention, sexual violence, enforced disappearance, destruction of properties, and excessive use of force causing serious injuries by use of pilot firing shotguns. That all members of international media should be allowed and encouraged to advocate strongly for the three parties to the Kashmir conflict, namely the people of Jammu and Kashmir, Pakistan and India, to embark on the path of dialogue. That all those who held in administrative detention ensure full respect of standards of due process and fair trial guaranteed to them under international law. We have Article 6 of ECHR, which gives right throughout European Union, and also United Kingdom is a signatory of that article, which gives people free right to defend themselves if they have been charged for anything. And also, I would request all those human rights activists, we heard from Yvonne today, she has a history of working, advocating, and sometimes suffering herself. And thank you very much for your work you've done for many countries, for highlighting the human rights violation and abuses. And I would also urge upon the conference and the delegates to support us in our difficult time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed Shoaib. And to second the motion, I'm delighted to call Naseem Malik from Scottish Asians for Alba. Naseem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Conference, very good afternoon to you. Can I take just a minute and congratulate the Chair, Chris, their team, who have done tremendously hard in the background to set up this beautiful conference. And thank you. And especially to thank you all the most beautiful people for making this successful. I wish not to repeat what Mr. Shoaib has said, so I'm going to cut it short slightly. The Indian authorities have imposed broad restrictions on freedom of movement, banned public meetings, shut down telecommunication services and educational institutions, and detained thousands of people without their will and without any charge. And critics are threatened with arrests, so nobody speaks. The authorities are maintaining stifling restraints on Kashmiris in violation of their basic rights. It is using harsh counter-terrorism, sedition laws, and draconian Public Safety Act to clamp down on peaceful demonstrations and detention without trial for up to 2 years. Political activity is disputed. In this disputed region is in a deep freeze. Businesses are struggling, people's rights are being suppressed, arrests, torture, and ill treatment of security forces is a norm. Pellet guns are used to disperse peaceful demonstrations. Young girls are kidnapped and raped. Young boys are tortured and put in prisons. Enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings, and rapes are the norms. The Indian government's media policies in occupied Jammu and Kashmir empowers the authorities to decide what is fake news, plagiarism, and unethical or anti-national activities, and to take the punitive actions against media outlets, journalists, and editors. The policy contains vague and overboard provisions that are open to abuse and could unnecessarily restrict and penalize legally protected speech. The government crackdown adversely affected livelihoods, particularly in the tourism-dependent Kashmir Valley, where the losses are now in billions. And they have now doubled because of the COVID. Access to the internet is not available. The pandemic has made access to the internet crucial for information, communication, education, and businesses. Doctors have repeatedly complained that lack of internet was hurting the COVID response. The impact on education has been particularly severe. Graduate students and teachers have been unable to participate in conferences or have their papers published, causing willful harm to their careers and violating the rights to education. The situation has only deteriorated in the past 2 years, a process of throttling of democracy and democratic rights, which has resulted in a forced silence in the region. Please join me to condemn these atrocities and human rights violations against the innocent people of Jammu and Kashmir. Indian oppressors should reverse their abusive policies and provide remedies for those whose rights are violated. The authorities should take immediate steps to protect rights by releasing political detainees, upholding the right to free speech, including by withdrawing cases against journalists and activists, restoring full internet access, and holding to account officials responsible for rights violations. Extensive abuse of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in the disputed Kashmir yells for the attention of the international community to probe into the violations of human rights reported by local and the international bodies. It calls for the United Nations attention to step forward with collective action against abuse of human rights at large. It is high time for the international community to probe into the matter on an urgent basis and take necessary actions to protect human rights as described in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. My friends, it's our duty to voice our concern on every forum, whether posting on social media or writing to your local MP or any other forum you may find appropriate. But please keep this issue refreshed in the eyes of those who are responsible for resolving it, so that collectively we can put an end to this grave issue which is affecting lives of millions of innocent people. And people of Kashmir deserve the right to self-determination and end to the human rights violations which have gone on for years. Thank you very much for your time. I second this motion. I would urge you to please vote for the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Naseem. So Conference is being asked simply to declare our support for the upholding of international human rights obligations in Kashmir. Is Conference happy to approve that motion? Thank you very much indeed. We now move to the very exciting raffle. I'm going to ask Ken McCaskill MP to draw the tickets. I saw Neil Hanby had his laid out. I've told him to put them away. There'll be absolutely no cheating whatsoever. Can I ask Eileen Newman to come to the stage? She's been working so hard. It's going to work like this. The raffle tickets will be drawn by Mr McCaskill without conferring with Mr Hanby. Then those raffle tickets will be passed to Eileen Newman, who will take them and attach them to the items in the lesser hall, and you can collect your item if you are a winner at close of proceedings. Kenny.
That's orange 473.
That's orange 473. No
Blue
luck.
443.
Blue 443.
Blue 138. Orange 130. Orange 595. Blue 418. Pink 432. Pink 528. Pink 686 and orange 640.
Thank you very much indeed. Congratulations to all the winners, and I'm delighted that there's been no luck at all at this table, quite rightly so. I hope you ordinary members win everything. Now, before we play you a short video, you'll have seen in the lesser hall we had a selection of baby pics, and you were to try and attach names to who the babies were, and it's been quite a lot of fun. So I'm going to ask Christina Hendry to come up and let us know who some of you thought the babies were. Christina Hendry, joined by Robert Reid, all from Alba Youth. So they're on the screen behind you, Tina.
Oh, fantastic, thank you. So, we are Alba Youth, so we thought, youth, baby pictures, who can guess who's who? So we asked the candidates from the May election if we will send a baby picture in, and we picked 11 and put them up on our stall for everyone to guess. Now, I thought it would be too easy, but it clearly wasn't. So we helped you all out. We wrote down a list of the names so you could match them up. It still wasn't very easy. Alex Salmond came over and asked where he was, so that shows how easy it was. Someone thought that I was Brian Topping, so I'm hoping Brian takes that as a compliment. I don't think anybody guessed Chris McElhenney, apart from his mum and dad, obviously. So, yeah, it was quite difficult. So nobody got 11 out of 11. I did, but I got the photo, so I don't think I count. So there was 3 people who got 6 out of 11. So I was quite impressed because some people got none, but don't worry, it was very hard. So out of the 3, we are going to just draw one, and that'll be the winner. And the prize is a House of Commons bottle of gin, kindly donated by Kenny McCaskill. So thank you to Kenny. So if you see that blonde baby, that's Chris McElhenney, no one could get. And the dark-haired child with the dungarees, that's Brian, but I suppose he looks like me. So there you go. So we're just going to draw them now. Robert actually is going to ask Tasmina, our chair, to just pick one of these 3 prizes. So we'll see who wins.
Okay, and the winner is Jim Torrance.
Oh. I'll bring the bottle over to you, Jim. Very well done.
Yes. I think Alba Youth were trying to run the competition at another event, but I think you're going to have to tell us who they all are.
We'll have to get new pictures for next time. So, in the top, that one was Suzanne. I got it right.
Suzanne Blackley.
Number 2 in the beautiful, beautiful fleece, that was Josh Robertson. The one below, on the first page, that is Tasmina. A lot of people actually thought it was Alex Salmond, so there must be a likeness. The one below, Josh there, is Heather McLean. The one at the top next, number 3, is Eva Comrie. The one next to that is our very own Corrie Wilson.
Oh.
The one below in the black, this was the most guessed, so clearly there must be, you can't have changed very much. That was Alex Salmond. He must still look about 4 years old. And the one beside, that's me with the cheeks. Yeah, there's one last page, if they're able to change it. I know you're all wanting to know who everybody was. So we said that was Chris, that was Brian, and the last one was Judith Reed.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, we'll see. Robert thinks it was that hard. We're going to also say who came joint second and third.
It's only fair, I think. It was Irene Buchan. She got 6 as well. And Christina's mum actually got the other one. So,
perhaps a slightly unfair advantage there.
Yeah, she already knew 2, so she doesn't get a clap. She already knew 2 of them.
She was very lucky.
So thank you all very much for taking part. It was 50p a guest, and all the money is going to go towards campaigning in the future for Alba Youth, but really it's for Alba. So thank you very much, all of you.
Well done. Thank you very much indeed to Alba Youth. I'm going to ask the lights to go down while we play a short video.
I am Alba for a country that can stand on its own, can be free and have a better future.
I'm Alba. I know Alba can deliver an independent Scotland.
I'm Alba for independence because I'm not a devolutionist.
I'm Alba as a young person. I care about Scotland's future and my future.
I am Alba for a better future for our sons and our daughters.
I'm Alba. I care about my sons and my grandchildren. I want a future for them and theirs, and for yours too.
husband and a dad. I've got 3 daughters. Women's rights is important for me. I don't want to see them diminished in any way.
I want an independent and prosperous Scotland.
I am Alba for a new road to independence.
I'm Alba for an independent Scotland which is nuclear-free and poverty-free.
The only person who is working completely for independence is Alex Salmond.
I'm Alba because I believe we're going to bring the fight, the hunger and the passion which will turn the no to the yes.
A party that puts independence first and intends to, at the earliest opportunity, start negotiations for independence, and that's Alba.
I'm Alba because I want action on independence now.
Delegates, please welcome to the lectern our Deputy Leader, Kenny McCaskill MP.
Friends, when I was proud to serve as an MSP in Holyrood, when it aspired to be an independent parliament for the people of Scotland, not seeking to become an exclusive members-only institution, I was often asked by children and young people who came to Parliament as a constituency MSP if I knew the First Minister, to which I had to respond that yes, indeed I had been at school with him. So Alec and I go back a long, long way. We have, and still have, disagreements. Indeed, we disagree on football allegiance, but I note an honourable draw was had satisfying both earlier today in the Edinburgh Derby. I also know that apparently in the biography of him by David Torrance, the disagreements that he and I have been narrated widely. But what I can say is that throughout the time I have known Alec, he has always had my back, and he's always had the cause of independence for Scotland at his heart. He's a man who's had his trials and tribulations, but he's conducted himself with dignity, with decency, and with courage. It was those values that saw him convene the first SNP and indeed independence administration, to lead the first independence government, not an executive, and delivered the first independence referendum. He still has fuel in the tank and the road to run. And the best way I can introduce him is to mention a song that I take from Ireland, not a rebel song, but a folk song. And the chorus goes, "An outlawed man in a land forlorn. He scorned to turn and fly, but he kept the cause of freedom safe up on the mountains high." I give you Alex Salmond.
Well, thanks for that introduction, Kenny. I have a question, but I mean, isn't the Irish word for outlaw Tory? You noticed that Piper McGilvery was playing Highland Cathedral. That actually is an illustration. That song, that famous song, that talisman rousing chorus of the world reach of our country. Highland Cathedral was actually written by two German musicians, Ulrich Ruwer and Michael Korb, for a Highland Games in Germany in 1982. And I often wonder when I hear that song and the other influences of Scotland worldwide, is what a wonderful thing it would be if we could marshal that goodwill, that soft power that Scotland has to Scotland and the world's benefit. Now, Alba, we are 6 months old. But in reality, delegates, we are 2 days young. A political party, it starts with an idea, sustained by a belief, but it's the people, the members, who make the party. And that has come into place gloriously for us in the last 2 days. The fabric that makes our party, our women's wing, our youth wing, our Asian wing, are being woven into an Alba tartan. The result is going to be both amazing and formidable. I'm interested, this is only a portion of our strength. For very obvious reasons, many of our friends and fellow delegates couldn't be with us under the current circumstances. Indeed, some accidents befell some. Izzy Zambanini, who has done so much with Tasmin Ahmed Sheikh to make this conference possible, was victim of an accident just a few days ago. But I'm delighted to tell conference I received a message this morning that she is on the mend and watching this conference gavel to gavel. So you better all behave. Delegates, our core belief is independence for our country. Not as an aspiration for the future, but something to be delivered with urgency. Not for the hereafter, but for the here and now. There have been 5 national elections in Scotland since the first referendum in 2014. In each of them, the parties of independence have won a majority of seats. In this year's Scottish election, it was both a majority of seats and, thanks to Alba's small contribution, a majority of votes as well. And yet, despite that clearly expressed mandate from the people to at least urgently reopen the decision on independence, no progress has been made. Now, of course, there's always a reason. We had to wait until Brexit. But 2 general elections were held during the Brexit process. In any case, Brexit was not a reason for delaying independence, it was a reason for accelerating independence. And then there's the pandemic. Why should the pandemic be a reason for delaying, at the very least, the preparations for a referendum? The pandemic didn't stop the actual Scottish elections this year, nor should it have. Why then did it delay independence preparations? My favourite Bill Murray film is Groundhog Day. It's the theme of somebody caught in a time loop. And that, of course, that theme, the time loop theme, has been dealt with many times in film. It's usually a comedy. But for Scotland and independence, it's becoming a tragedy. To illustrate this clearly, let's take the headlines over the last few years from one national newspaper selected purely at random. Now, let's have a quick look at some of the highlights. 1st of August 2015. You can't stop another referendum if the Scots want one, Nicola Sturgeon. The 13th of March 2017. Here we go, from a Nicola Sturgeon press conference. The 9th of June 2018. Get ready for Indie Ref 2, from Keith Brown. The 29th of April 2019. Indie Ref 2, most likely before the end of 2020, Nicola Sturgeon. 30th of January 2020, if this Parliament votes for a referendum, it will have it, Mike Russell. The 15th of November 2020, independence referendum is to happen next year, Ian Blackford. Well, that is good news. Now, these are not the remarks of some overwrought, overheated backbencher. These are the remarks of the First Minister, her Deputy, the SNP President and the leader of the Westminster Group. Is it any wonder that Westminster Tory politicians seem pretty relaxed about any political challenge for Scotland? The Grand Old Duke of York, he had 10,000 men. He marched them up to the top of the hill and he marched them down again. The next line of that song is Rule Britannia. And that's exactly what will happen if we constantly march people up to the top of the hill and march them down again. Bill Murray, he was only trapped in his time loop for a few months. Scotland's referendum Groundhog Day has lasted 6 years. And now in the run-up to the SNP virtual conference, we have the announcement this week that a reduced civil service team are going to be asked to start preparations for an independence white paper. Wow, had me back. It is. It is perfectly reasonable for the SNP to conduct a virtual conference, but not to conduct a virtual independence campaign. The real task, the task which this party is applying itself to, are these. Firstly, to formulate a strategy for bending Westminster to the will of the Scottish people. That was exactly what Kenny McCaskill laid out in the first debate of our first conference. After 2011, we faced down David Cameron and George Osborne. Are we really saying that Scotland can't face down Boris Johnson and the disco king himself, Michael Gove? But it won't happen by itself. If we start that campaign for Scotland's claim of right, if we started it now, today, a referendum would still be some day off. But one thing's for sure, if you never really start the next independent campaign, then you shall never, ever finish the independence campaign. Our second task as a party is to refurbish the independence platform for the post-Brexit age. On Europe, on currency, on borders. Indeed, Alba candidates did more work in that in the 5 weeks of the election campaign than the party of government have done in 5 years. We didn't get much opportunity to promote that work during the election. Now we have, and this conference has been a great start. And the third task is the most important, and that is to follow what was done in the referendum campaign itself, to inform our fellow citizens of the case for independence. What wins converts to the independence cause is the arming of the people with information. Not that the policies of any individual political party, however good they may be, but the facts and figures illustrating the fundamental case for freedom. Now, looking at the first independence referendum, when support for independence rose by 15%, there was one publication which stood out as winning converts to our national cause, the Wee Blue Book. It was not a throwaway leaflet, but a pamphlet articulating the cause. And so I commit Alba today to assist with the publication of a new edition of this information, the Wee Alba Book, The Case for Independence. I've asked Robin McAlpine to write the text, and the book will be edited by Stuart Campbell, who of course produced the Blue Book itself. Now, a couple of days ago, I had a postcard from someone who described themselves just as a supporter of independence. I've got it here. He or she wrote, "I just wanted to wish you well for the first Alba conference. I'm not a member, but I'm a supporter. I'm looking forward to hearing positive ideas from Alba. There's generally a quote from Burns that can be found in these situations. And this is what he or she wrote. Here's freedom to them that would read. Here's freedom to them that would write. There's nae never fear to the truth should be heard, except whom the truth would indict." Friends, we're a new political party. We're not rich in finance, we're not rich in money, but we are rich in ideas. We'll need to fundraise to allow us to help deliver the Alba book and the truth about independence to Scottish homes and households. However, from the soundings I've taken already, let me today commit that we shall aim to deliver 100,000 copies of the Alba booklet around Scotland before the local elections of next year. And so independence is our aim. But with other independence parties available, what is our unique role? You know, delegates had an idea a while back when I was leading another political party. I thought if the SNP could present itself as a coherent left-of-centre political party, it could replace the Labour Party as the dominant force in Scottish politics. I knew back in the 90s it was a long-term project, that Rome wasn't built in a day. But I also knew that there was another, more immediate role. Because every time the SNP won a by-election or spiked in the opinion polls, all of a sudden the Labour Party rediscovered their historic, very historic commitment to self-government. Now this, I've got to say, it worked out pretty well, because it ended up with the Scottish Parliament reconvening on the Mound. So as it was then for the SNP and Labour, so it is now for Alba and the SNP. Make no mistake, in the long term, Alba wished to be part of the government of an independent Scotland. However, the very first political breakthrough scored by this party will concentrate the minds of the SNP Green administration and concentrate them wonderfully. Independence will suddenly become the first thought, not an afterthought. It will be like having an SNP conference run up every week of the year. Because it is Alba who provide the grit in the independence oyster. Secondly, Alba provides an independence insurance policy. Another idea I had way back was to persuade people that if the Party of Independence demonstrated competence in running the government of a devolved Scotland, it would build up confidence in our ability as a people to run an independent country. You might remember that Lord George Foulkes, then an MSP, once accused us of making public services in Scotland better than England, and he complained we were doing it deliberately. Free education, free prescriptions, new hospitals, new schools, a bridge over the Forth, a railway to the borders, a bypass for Aberdeen. He was right. I was doing it deliberately. But now, delegates, the reverse is happening, and I presume it's accidentally, because the record of the SNP Green Coalition on education, health, the economy, local government is that its very kindest mediocre. So is its record on the pandemic. And when that immediate cloud of the pandemic lifts, they shall be judged on that, and probably harshly. We must not have independence judged with it. We do not want people turning back to the tired old unionist parties, or worse still, staying at home. There has to be an independence alternative. Make no mistake, Alba is now that alternative. I want us to make that case, and this is really important, particularly online, by talking up Alba, not running down the SNP. We have a noble cause. Let's do it justice. In the last 2 days, we've already demonstrated that we've got ideas and positive vision enough to take the country forward. We have, for example, the 5-point plan for tackling child and family poverty. That's what you debated today, the poverty that stalks this land. That plan shows what can be done now by local and Scottish Government to directly assist families. Instead of taking the money out of the pockets of families, we put money direct into the family budget. And remember, friends, that tax and cut, as Neil Hanvey memorably described it yesterday, doesn't just affect the unemployed and those with disabilities. We heard from Councillor Michelle Fairns yesterday, the grim reality facing many working families in Scotland. And the Tory Chancellor wants to take £20 out of the weekly budget of 200,000 of such families in Scotland. £20 a week out of the family budget. It must not be allowed to happen. And when we advocate universal school meals, breakfast, lunches, all levels of education for all children all year round, let's do it with imagination and verve, mobilising the great chefs of Scotland into creating the menus. Scotland produces the finest food in the world. Is it really beyond us to get it into the mouths of our youngsters? Then our resolution on the climate emergency demonstrated not just the Scotland's contribution to the global challenge, but the imagination required to reboot the Scottish economy to meet the renewable revolution. We could harness Scotland's resources to Scotland's benefit, not by closing down the North Sea, but by forcing investment into carbon capture, clean burn hydrogen and renewables. Instead of steering generation away from Scotland through sky-high transmission charges, let's channel the resources into development of our clean, green, massive energy base. 10 years ago, offshore wind was in its infancy and hugely expensive. Now it is hugely lucrative, worth many billions, and moving into deeper waters, Scottish waters. Scotland needs a stake in the generation of wealth from our own natural resources. That's why the concept of a Scottish National Renewables Corporation is of such importance. Scotland requires a share, let's say 2.5%, in every single major field, onshore and offshore, and therefore in a position to insist that the infrastructure, the platforms, floating or fixed, must be built in Scottish yards. The Campbelltown Tower Factory, which I intervened to save in 2011, is closed this week. The BIFAB yards are idle. The receivers of Campbelltown this week said there was no prospect of a recovery in the marketplace. What? The market is booming. What is lacking is the political will and the industrial strategy. Every warning, every single warning our national movement has issued about the pillage of our country's resources over the last half-century has come to pass. Now, with 1/4 of Europe's entire offshore wind resource in our waters, we have a second chance to put things right. For 50 years, the cry of "It's Scotland's oil" has resounded through the politics of Scotland. Now let it be "It's Scotland's renewable energy." And thirdly, on our agenda yesterday, we discussed proposals for a written constitution for an independent Scotland, a fundamental law for creating a new state from this ancient nation. Of course, much of the publicity surrounding the motion focused on Alba proposing an elected head of state for an independent country. And just let me assure the Sunday Express, I am not a candidate. I have no ambitions in that direction. Because, you know, I would have been surprised, astonished, if Alba had advocated anything less or anything less for an independent country. But there's much more to it than a written constitution, much more to that than an elected head of state. It's about the protection that every citizen should have under the law. We have governments in Westminster, and I'm sorry to say in Scotland, who are careless of citizens' rights. Less than 2 years ago, the Westminster government attempted to bypass Parliament with the royal prerogative. The Scottish government seem almost oblivious to women's sex-based rights as they pursue gender and self-identification in a divisive way and with an urgency totally lacking in the independence campaign. Why not? Why not utilise the citizens' assemblies to take some of the heat out of that debate? There are now real, profound questions on the impartiality of the Crown Office and the blurring of the proper boundaries between the legal system and politics. And now, our own Parliament that we campaigned for, fought for, protested for, demonstrated for, seeks to restrict the right of protest by petitioning that champion of human liberty, Priti Patel. What an appalling misjudgment! Scotland doesn't need Priti Patel and shouldn't need even the Strasbourg Convention to defend our citizens' rights. The Convention is a backstop. Our primary defence should lie in our own fundamental law, our own written constitution for a free and independent Scotland. Now, friends, as we reflected yesterday morning at the start of our proceedings, it's 20 years since the events of 9/11 plunged the world into darkness. And yet, at that moment, amid all the suffering, America was never stronger, as the entire world railed against the atrocity and rallied to her side. Like Pearl Harbor, it traumatized but united America. But that moment of solidarity, of unity, was lost in the rage. And instead of a law enforcement operation to root out the evil of Al-Qaeda, we've had 20 years of invasions and occupations, leaving hundreds of thousands dead. For much of these 20 years, the SNP and a few others provided an alternative view in the benches of the House of Commons. Didn't win a single vote in the House of Commons, but marshalled much respect out with it, providing just a glimpse of a different world view that an independent Scotland might take. I look at the House of Commons and the SNP benches, and I see nothing of that now. With just a few honourable exceptions, such as Joanna Cherry, Angus Brendan McNeill, Douglas Chapman, dissent has been absorbed into the benches. The SNP have been assimilated into dangerous neocon nonsense, just as America is turning away from it. In the last 150 years, no political force from the Celtic countries, not even the Irish Parliamentary Party at the height of Parnell's powers, not the radical Liberals in Scotland, not the Red Clydesiders, not even the Labour Party, achieved the dominance in seats that the SNP have boasted at Westminster over 3 general elections. And what exactly have they done with that trust, with all that political influence? Nothing. They've settled down at Westminster instead of settling up for Scotland. The world of 2021 is not the world of 2001 or even the world of 2014. Much has happened. Brexit, COVID. Nicola Sturgeon said on Friday that COVID had made the financial case for independence more challenging. She is wrong. These great events, these world events, make the economic and the social necessity of Scottish independence overwhelming. Friends, in 6 months, Alba has come a long way. We have more than 6,000 members. Our local organisations stretch the length and breadth of the country. We have 15 councillors, 2 members of Parliament, and now a team of elected official office bearers elected by you to take the party forward. More importantly, even than that, at this conference, we started to build a platform of the Scotland we seek. We seek a Scotland of social justice, a free Scotland which frees Scots, with the education and health services in public hands which will make us proud. We seek a Scotland which banishes weapons of mass destruction from Scottish waters and Scottish soil. Alba will never desert the cause of unilateral nuclear disarmament. And we seek a Scotland which contributes to the greatest challenge facing humanity, global warming. Our country is blessed with 1/4 of Europe's offshore wind power, 1/4 of Europe's tidal power, 10% of wave power. That's potential. But let's use that potential for our benefit and for the benefit of humanity. The future of Scotland lies in mobilising our natural resources. But at the heart of that, and deeper still, it lies in mobilising the talents of our people. Some years ago, the American historian Arthur Herman, he wrote a book entitled How the Scots Invented the Modern World. Now, if that's true, and much of it is, then why can't this generation of Scots reinvent a modern Scotland? Our unionist opponents, they say we're not capable of that. genetically ill-equipped, as one Labour politician famously said. Well, delegates and friends, our position, Alba's position, Scotland's position is not just that we can, but that we must and we shall reclaim independence for our people and for our country. Thank you. Handing back the chair to someone who's superbly chaired our proceedings over the last 2 days, Kashmir Sheikh.
Thank you so much. I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you to a whole lot of people who have helped make this conference possible. I want to thank, first of all, our tech team at the back there, on sound, Phil Zambonini and Robert. On lights, David. On avian projectors, Simon Bain and his team from SLS. And on the outside broadcast and live stream, Alan and Ian. And of course, Indie Live. Thank you very much for doing what you were told. Can I thank all of our wonderful stewards, all volunteers. We put on a conference under really difficult conditions. Many volunteers that had volunteered initially and really wanted to be here couldn't because they're self-isolating or other health issues. So for those of you who are able to make it, we are forever indebted to you. Thank you. A special thanks to Izzy Zambonini, who's already been mentioned. She couldn't be with us today, but has worked so hard behind the scenes to make this conference happen. And I know she's watching it on the live stream. Thank you, Izzy. Also, huge thanks to Gail Hendry, who's been in charge of the registration desk with Karen, Alex and Gail all weekend, and even today, which is her birthday. Happy birthday to Gail. I'd like to thank the conference committee, the Scottish agents for Alba, the security team here, the catering staff, the venue, Inverclyde Leisure staff, particularly Ian Dyer. And I'd like to thank you, delegates, you here in the hall, and those who I know or watching at home. You've made this conference everything that we hoped it would be. And I also want to thank Eddie Kearney, who yesterday passed me a song that he's written for Alba, for our inaugural conference called Jimmy Watt o' Greenock. Thank you so much. We have so much talent in this party. And with that, delegates, I'd like to thank you for the immense privilege it has been for me to serve you and chair this inaugural conference. Now, to finish conference, we're going to hear some music, and we will finish in the traditional way after we've heard a couple of upbeat jigs, and that will be with Scots Way. Thank you. Please welcome Ian McGilvray.